Okay, this is the basic interface for SketchBook Designer. If you want to change it, go to Window. If you want to reset it, go to Default Layout. It will move your bars back to the middle of the screen. I like them to the left because they crowd a bit. We're going to do that. Going to import an image to work off of, just a sketch to have something to build on. This is going to open the Scale tool, and it will give you a mover helper in the middle. If you click on the upper right corner, it's going to let you scale the whole thing. If you want to just scale part, this is your horizontal, this is your vertical, and then if you click on the middle, you'll get the circle. That's your pivot, and then it will do everything based off of that. You can flip horizontal, vertical. I don't want to use that. Hit enter when you're done. It's going to position it, and then I'm going to drop this layer by clicking on the little page icon with the arrows on it, and I'm going to move it to the bottom. Now, I'm going to click on the canvas. This is how you change the size. I'm going to change it to, you can use the horizontal bar to drag it, or you can enter it by clicking on the grid. I'll make it 1920 by 12 by 1080. Should be alright. Now it's a typical resolution here. You can add texture, like paper or whatever you want. Don't really like that look. You can change the paper color. If you want to export it with a transparent background, when you do so, just turn the canvas off with the little eye icon on the layer. That's all you need. If you want to do anything else like crop it or whatever, you can use these arrows to change that. Closing this, and gonna go to the vector layer. You can hit spacebar to get this wheel, and then click on the zoom tool, zoom in and out, and then click outside of that to move around, or you can click your middle mouse wheel and use the scroll. The spacebar is mostly useful for tablet users. Just bind a key to that on your tablet. Alright, here's some basic tools. I'm going to save real quick. Start with the pencil. This is the sharpest tool. The toolbar is on the left. And I'll crank up the size to about a 4. It gives you a preview in the middle of your screen of what it's going to look like. And turn the intensity up to 100%. It's in freehand mode right now. And when I draw, it's going to give me this. This is the, what do they call this? You can change this in the preferences. It's called cycle and smooth manipulator. You can either have it on always or shift control held. We'll leave it on always for now. Basically, it controls how smooth your stroke is after it's there. There's curve a lot, a little bit, and then straight line. And then what you can do is you can configure how much it curves it by dragging it out. So if you're going to freehand, I suggest you use this, and then when you're done, just hit enter and it will set it. And then this is the second line. Now, since it's a vector, you can change it by selecting, right? Because we didn't close the stroke yet, it's still open. You can also change to a different tool. Here's brush, here's marker, here's airbrush. Airbrush is kind of hard to use, especially as a vector, because it will look really sloppy if you go over it, because of the transparency effect, and you can't really blend as vectors very easily because those tools are disabled. You can't erase, you can't smudge, so you need to be very careful when you're blending. So airbrushing can be very hard. There's custom brush. You can make any brush you want. Use that as you see fit. And then there's guide Guide doesn't have a stroke. You can see it through all layers if you toggle it. So guide brush is just, it shows up as a dotted line. You can control it through the view menu by show guide on all active layers on active layer, or you can hide it, and that will allow you to do things I'll cover later. Anyways, pen is probably the most useful for tracing stuff. First one has a big taper, last one has a medium taper, and the middle one has almost no taper. So you can select these by choosing select curve, and we can delete these. Now, these three tools in the front allow you to control the curves. I'm going to go ahead and use the pen tool with the second option with a 3 stroke and turn the intensity up all the way. So let's say I draw a shape here, and it's not closed or anything, and I'll draw another one. Okay, so I want to close the shape. I'm going to use combine curves. Combine curves lets you do just that. You click on one point and then you click on another point. It's going to close the curve. Do the same thing here. Close the curve. Now it's a complete shape. Now that it's a complete shape, you can use the fills. Another thing you can do, select the curve, delete it. You can have intersecting lines like this. You can use the endpoint tool. It will select all the stragglers, and then you can delete them or move them or whatever you want. It will give you this shape. This won't be a closed shape, but in this program you can still fill unclosed, shapes that aren't closed as long as there's no holes in them, and you can do that. Now if I were to, pick the endpoints with the endpoint tool, I can still drag them around and it will keep the shape closed even though. Well, now it's a closed shape, but if I were to take a shape that wasn't closed, say this shape, and I were to fill this, now if I were to take an endpoint and break it, it's going to kill the fill. So keep that in mind when you're working with shapes that weren't closed and you try to move them. So I'm going to go to some tracing so I can show how the other ones work more effectively. Freehand's not too useful for tracing unless you're really good at it. This is probably better. You'll get less anchor points and it will look cleaner. Do curve by point. Now you're gonna want to start somewhere where it's gonna be simple. I'll start here at the nose and just drop your points in. It's gonna make these anchor points and you can move them along the line anywhere you want. So just drop them in and then position them wherever, as long as it looks decent. It's all good. If the line starts to shake and bend a lot, it means that you have too sharp of turns. If that starts to happen, just make a new line and then it will stop that from happening. I'll show that in a second when we get up to a corner. That's going to cause a lot of bumps in your line. You can fix that by, see, something like that. Going to crash the program. Okay, so if I were to try to go around this corner here, it's going to bend it a lot, and then if I were to try to clean it up, it's just going to keep bending it because it's too sharp. That wouldn't look too bad, but if I wanted the sharp corner, I could either try to keep doing that and it's going to keep deforming this, or I could just make a new line. It's easier just to make a new line. So I'm going to delete these. Anyways, I want to trace up here, so I'm going to close this and hit OK to end the line by clicking the checkbox, or you could hit enter on your keyboard. Now to make a new line, if you follow the guide, it's going to be green if it's going to snap to the line and red if it's going to snap to an endpoint. Let's go ahead and click on it when it's red. And we keep following the line. Now, since there's so many curves here, it might try to bend a lot, but as long as you make a lot of points, it should be somewhat curvy. Again, we can always go back in and fix this later with the tools, which is what I'm going to do because this is just getting ridiculous here. Alright, now, best thing to do here is join these with the Combine Curves tool, which will smooth this also. So I'm going to go ahead and see how these are two different lines. You can tell because when I hover over them, it says that's one line because it's blue and then it turns green. This is the other one. So I can choose Combine Curves, which is this tool. Select one, select the other. When you zoom in, you'll be able to tell. You can change the movers, and then you can change the point which is going to combine the curve, and it will create a smooth transition, and it will connect it. Now that's one line. Now this is a little rough here. If I want to smooth this out, I use Smooth Curve tool, and it's doing it way up there where I can't even see, so it's not helping me out any. Very annoying. Okay. Put it where I want it. Here's good. Now just smooth out the area I need. That looks alright. Hit OK. Find another area where I want to smooth. That looks a little like lame, so I'll go ahead and smooth this out. Looks okay now. I don't really want to rotate the canvas, but this all looks good. And now it's looking a little better. Go ahead and save. So it looks okay. If I want to fill it now, I can. Fills will turn orange if the line is complete. That's a solid fill. I can do a gradient fill. Now to move the fill, just click on the edge and drag it. Now you can bend the fills, clicking the corners. Of course, gonna have to zoom out a little more to grab this. Because the fills are deformable, vector-based, or whatever you want to call it, you can also add points. You could trace a figure if you wanted to get it to outline the shape with a fill, like if this was a radial fill or whatever. And you can add highlights to certain areas. You can add more points to the fill or to the gradient or fill by clicking on the line. Hold Alt to get the color picker. You can click anywhere on the screen. If you have multiple monitors, you can click on the other area of the image. You can click anywhere you want. So, whatever. To get a different color, you can click on the color wheel to get another color. Click on the bigger color wheel, you can expand this. And there's different color modes. There's even a little 3D object that you can get colors off of. And that's just, I don't even know why that's there. It's almost like a toy. But I'm sure it has its uses. And you can make colors have transparency in the fill, do whatever you want. So we've got that in there now. I'm not going to spend a ton of time configuring this fill because I don't care. Now if we want to use these other tools, we've got Shift Curve, which basically just lets you move a curve. So it keeps the proportions correct and it just lets you bend it out. So if you need to make a small adjustment by moving a shape, use Shift Curve. Yes, I want to undo, and I don't care about the gradient. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete this fill. I'm going to select the curve, and I'm going to hit delete because the gradient's selected. Now you've also gotten straighten curve, which is the same thing, except it will make a straight area between the two movers. Now you can also bend the point, and of course you could make it curved again. And then you have restroke curve, which will allow you to just redraw parts of it to however you want. So if you just need to make touch-ups, use that. And then you also have, what do they call this? Copy, duplicate curve, which is just like copy paste, but one button. Now, these three tools are mostly for like detailing. If you have a tablet and you draw with a pen, you can use it to touch up imperfections. Let's say I want to make a little shape for like a detail on something. So I will do that quick. This is a pretty typical shape people use for details on stuff, I think. I'm gonna go ahead and make this a custom brush. And min radius I'll make really small. Max radius I'll make decently large, let's say 15. And then I'll make it have kind of a, I don't know, calligraphic look. Is that right? I don't know. I don't need to use that. You can make it have like the rotation effect where it has the barbs and stuff. I don't know if that's useful here, but In some situations, I suppose it could be. That's rotate by stroke. Anyways, probably don't need to use rotation. Now, that's how you would go about making something like that. And it tapers evenly. Now you can change the individual pressure and tapering by using these tools. So if I'm going to go ahead and scale this a little bit, hit enter to place it, zoom out a bit, use this one is edit pressure. You can change, you have to select the stroke first. Edit pressure is going to change how thin it is. So you can make it fatter. You can make it thinner. And you just fiddle with it as much as you want. Then there's also edit size, edit intensity, and whatever. Only useful if you really want to make something super detailed. Those are pretty much all the vector tools. Oh, let me go back to this. These tools, deform and warp, you can use for perspective effects. If you're placing multiple objects, just click on the middle piece, the mover, and hit enter. It will place it, and just keep warping them to get the desired effect. And undo them. And like the other ones, if you get a huge bounding box like this, it's because you didn't select just the shape you want. And you can warp it in just one direction. What else? Perspective. And that's about it for these tools. That's pretty much all the tools there are. Can go to guide curves. If you use guide curves, you can see them through every layer. If I were to make this a guide curve, it's going to make them all dotted lines, so I'll turn this off. Now they're all light blue dotted lines. You can see it's just an outline. Now I go view, show guide curves on all visible layers. It's mostly useful for tracing stuff. If I were to go to the paint layer now, I can go to like marker, and if I turn snap brush to center of guide, I could paint on the guide curve directly. It will follow it. So I could trace it. I could use my trace. That's mostly what it's for. Since they're not connected, it's gonna stop me when I hit the end of the curve. If I wanted it to flow, I would have to connect the curves on the vector layer. So keep that in mind. You can also drop fills in here, obviously, in the paint layer. You can now use the dodge tool, the blur tool. It's blurring the lines. It's kind of hard to tell because there's not a lot of difference between those two lines. Probably if I had some dodge and burn effects, it will be more apparent. Anyways, you can fool with those tools later. Now the eraser tool will work because we're in the paint layer, right? And yep, all these tools are pretty much what you'd expect. If you would like, you can make vector masks and layer masks, vector layer masks, which will let you kind of color inside of the lines. But I prefer to use like a guide curve. That's pretty much all there is. There's other things you can do with symmetry. If you would like to paint with symmetry or make vectors with symmetry, you can make a layer. You can turn symmetry on. You can specify how much symmetry you would like. So let's say I want a lot of symmetry. That looks good. Now when I paint, it's gonna give me a lot of symmetry here. So let's use this tool. I could paint, I don't know, this would probably be best, like I said, with like a snowflake or something. And you could paint your design in every different direction. This is gonna look terrible because I have no idea what I'm doing. But you could do it much more effectively in a vector layer if I were to enable symmetry. And use the straight line tool. Whoops. Probably just fill this now. It's not connected like I thought. Have to connect it. So that's not perfect, but you get the idea. Now you can have symmetrical fills, and you can make cool patterns and do whatever you want. That's the basic idea of symmetry. And you can just keep doing whatever. Also, you can add layer folders, put stuff inside. And if you have a bunch of shapes, let's say I duplicate this layer here. Let me make a new layer. I've got this now. I'll put symmetry on this too. Okay, got another pattern now. Now I could go to the folder and I can move the whole folder. And you can control everything just by moving the folder, and it will control all the vector layers. If you wanted to organize your objects by body part or something and put all the head items in one folder and arms in another, and then you can just control the folder and move them all together. It's a lot easier to organize your projects. You can also warp them together and whatever. And that's about it. There's some other features, but this is the basics. Have fun.